Composition is more important than gear itself. And if you don't know these 5 principles, you might be holding yourself back and you don't even know it. Today we will be looking at small, medium, and large, less is more, layered subjects, leading lines, and windows as my 5 principles. I use these 5 principles not only in photography, but also in design when I was in school. And until I understood that you could mix some of these properties together, I truly wasn't meeting my potential. So first off, we're going to start with less is more. And I have pulled up my picture from San Fran of the hanging clothes and tan houses in the background. When it comes to less is more, there was actually a lot going on this street. There was people flying up and down on bikes. It was a very steep hill. Many other houses with color and things of that nature, but I wanted to highlight this specifically. Even if I took a few steps to the right, you could see the back of the house, which might have had more clothes, and you could see that this was more of a row home system, if you want to say that, and you had more going further back. But I think that this picture is excellent when it comes to simplicity and what I actually wanted to capture. So the sun not being able to fully see the wall that I'm standing closest to makes a contrast between itself and the wall that's fully lit, as well as window with that beautiful light. And of course, this wouldn't be as interesting if the purple, blue, and orangey tan wasn't displayed the way it was. There is a lot of angles in this picture, a lot of leading lines that take you from one direction to another. And I really enjoy this picture because of its graphic nature. The wall taking up maybe 60% of the photo. And it doesn't really say anything, but it just cuts out a window and frames everything so well. With the diagonal coming down on the first wall, then in the opposite direction, the hanging clothes, and the top of the house that we're seeing in the back, fully bathed in the sun, is once again going back in another direction. There's a lot of motion, even though these are very still items. But you wouldn't be able to see these things as important if I was to take a step back, if I was on the other side of the street, if I had a person walk in the front. This is one of the examples where less truly is more, because I can have you focus on exactly what I want you to focus on, even though it's not that interesting of a subject. It being spotlighted the way that I did makes it more of a importance overall. Another image that I have here is the blue house. And this blue house, once again, surrounded by all this tan, and it being a little bit more exciting or context put into the photo. But this is another less is more photo because I took one that was further to the left and you could see the alleyway that I believe is Noble's, or I guess it's a street, not an alleyway. But you can see further back, you can see more houses, and it takes out the blue house because I think there was also another blue house in the back that it breaks the contrast of everything, making the blue house not as important that I wanted to speak to. But less is more here again. There's not people, there's no cyclists, there's no cars. It's just a few colors, honestly, that stand out, being the blue, the yellows, and I guess you could say some red as well. But the blue is the standout, being surrounded by all these cream houses. I'd say less is more is best when you have a subject that isn't as important as something else in its immediate area, but you can somehow crop it out or punch in to make it the star of the show. And that's when I feel as though it's best to use this particular method. Next is layering subjects, and I feel as though I use this most when I have a subject that's a little bit lonely, that doesn't fully take the cake on its own, doesn't make a fully strong composition standing alone. My first example of this would be the Benz with the speed limit sign. I used the speed limit sign to cut out the green Benz and many others that are to the right hand side. But I made sure to leave a little bit of context, even though you most likely know what this sign is, leaving the L for limit, the black and white, having some type of understanding of what this item is so that it can have a part of the story on its own. Then having in the background the brown Benz that I absolutely adored, took so many pictures of because I truly enjoyed it. But this photo also shows something from the hanging clothes in San Fran. It's the fact that I'm once again trying to have 40%, 60%, or have some form of a breakdown of the composition that isn't just a clear shot overall straight at the item. Because if I took this picture with this knot here, you would just see a car sitting by itself, not too special other than the car itself. But that doesn't mean that the photo is now interesting. There's a bunch of different times where you can walk up to the most grand thing ever and say, I love this, I want to take a picture of it. But you just standing dead in the center or off to the side with nothing obstructing the view or no one walking by or anything of that nature, it could just feel like a snapshot. And even though this is still street photography and me just having fun, I wanted to add another element to make it seem as though, or at least so you can feel the effort that I put into trying to find this photo. Because I stood right next to the Benz. I decided to walk a number of feet away, see this sign, pick up the camera, move it over to the right, and make a very awkward dance of it to get this photo. But it does show that effort overall. Next up is the Winery barn. And I love this photo, as I've already talked about in one of my other videos, but this would have been extremely simple once again when it comes to the composition if I wasn't under this canopy and I just took a picture of the barn. It would still be beautiful, the colors would still be great, but it would just be an airy top of the screen. And me taking the time to take a few steps back, get under the canopy, see that there's two, see that they're different directions, see that they're layered a certain way was really great. And also, once again, breaking it down. So the canopy is, let's say, another 40% of the composition overall. It might not be the most important thing, it might not be the most exciting thing, but it's breaking down, creating triangles, creating diagonals that make more action within your photo. What I'm realizing overall with these pictures is that I'm taking a few moments to take a step back and look around. I'm figuring out what is most important and then seeing if there's some form of a secondary visual idea that I could add to it to make it stronger. Which makes this photo far more fun. It has far more contrast with all the blue and then matched back against its green and oranges. It's a moment that can make a photo really good or honestly really boring if you don't take it. Next, on layering subjects. And I don't want to show you only photos that were successful. Even though this Coney Island ride photo is fun, it's very chaotic and a little clustered. So I wanted to talk to you about how it's not good, but then also how still I try to plug in this element of layering my subjects. So of course I noticed the people at the bottom. They were kind of my secondary, but they're still kind of large in the hierarchy, so that messes up if they're truly secondary or primary subject, and might honestly be the root of my problem here. But I knew that I wanted to get a picture of the carts over top. That was really my main subject. And even the dad, the sons or cousins or whatever they might be, they were the true number one subject. But they're so small, they're in the back. Maybe if somehow I could get a different angle to more highlight from maybe the right hand side, getting the cart a little bit bigger, getting away from the people at the bottom so that my sizes could balance out a little bit more. And then also we have the cyclone in the background that's making the photo even more muddy. But you can see I'm making an attempt here. It's not always going to be successful, even though, like I said, it's a fun photo, so that's why I enjoy it. But it's a little blurry on what's going on. Almost feels more like a Where's Waldo-esque thing than an actual here's one, here's two, here's a tertiary. But you win some, you lose some. Since we are on the lower end, let's continue the trend. Small, medium, and large is a fantastic hierarchy breakdown that I was kind of talking about in the last one, where your main subject might be really large or it might be really small, but you have things that contrast it when it comes to size. Typically, the larger one's going to be the main subject, but there's many different ways that you can flip it. Something could be really, really small, like a person, but then a mountain's really, really big, or anything like that. but it's basically trying to find a relationship between three subjects and working them together. I have a picture of two guys in the alleyway of the lighthouse. And the reason why the photo doesn't work is because the guys aren't really doing anything exciting, or the contrast of their outfits in comparison to everything that's going on isn't that great. But this does show a large, medium, and small. The difference between their sizes as well isn't that drastic. So I feel like that is also a reason why this picture doesn't work very well. But I tried, okay? There is a huge lighthouse on the right side, that's being the white wall. Then they have more of a shed or a gift shop type of thing to the left. Then there's a very small sliver of space that breaks down the photo, having the two guys be highlighted. The lighting is good because it's a little bit different, has some contrast there, but it's just a subject miss here. If there was a kid running around playing with a gigantic lollipop or something of that nature, it would make this subject work a little bit more, but it just falls flat, which shows that sometimes even when you have the proper composition or thought process, it's still not always going to work, but that's okay. And to finish off our poor picture tour that we have here, continuing with the small, medium, and large. This is kind of a layer thing. It's kind of a small, medium, and large, but overall, I wish this photo really came out. And it is the San Fran Windmill. The reason I love this so much is because of the smaller people at the bottom, the really big windmill that they're painting, and their tiny paintings. The relationship between all of them and the understanding of the actual situation that we're in is really cool to me. It's like meta or something, I don't know. But the car being on the right, that messes the photo up, even though we can't control that. I do think that the windmill is centered, but the body of the windmill isn't centered. And I feel like that throws me off visually. The pictures that they're painting aren't fully vibrant enough because the day is just so gray. But when it comes to the execution of trying to do a small, medium, and big, trying to do a combination of a layered subject, this had really good potential. But thinking about it, if I was a little bit braver, if I was a little bit more brash, maybe a less is more would have worked better here. Getting closer up to one particular painter, having their shoulder, then having their easel and the painting, and then having the full windmill in the back from a lower angle would be the best way to take a photo of that. Bringing it back up to the top, we have leading lines. The definition of this one is rather easy. It's just lines leading the eye from one place to another. So I want to start with the Golden Gate Bridge and the biker. Of course, this photo has some elements of the small, medium, and big. The big being the Golden Gate Bridge. And the contrast of its beautiful red against such a blue area makes it really stand out, and your eye naturally goes to it. And of course, this bridge being straight or aligned helps you go from one direction to another. I personally think that you would start higher up because it's a contrast point with the bridge, being the only, not pillar, but whatever you would call this area. As your eye falls down, you also are going to go from right to left, moving all the way over to the left, seeing how the cords or metal rods or whatever you would call them, once again, fall down so nicely. You have the reds there. You can see people in the background serving as more as a small. And then you have this guy riding his bike. And as he rides the bike, you can also see that there is white paint on the ground to signify the bike lanes, which brings you straight to the center of the frame. And I think that's kind of where you start to hang out, and you can see a little bit more details if you wanted to hang around, if you wanted to look at the people off to the right or the people that are sitting down. But there's a lot of leading lines literally here because of chords and things of that nature that moves your eye directly around the frame, highlighting the important things and which you enjoy most. But overall, I really love this image, of course, and how it works so well. There's not too much that is muddying up the frame. It lets all the stars stand out because of the colors, because of the lines. And it's a really good example here. Coming back to New York and Central Park, we have this photo of two ladies sitting on a bench by the water. And another leading line here is the logs, or the walking path that has logs on the side of it. Me crouching down so low to get this photo shows you the beginning of the logs, or at least where it enters the photo. And then they direct you as two lanes going down to the ladies. And what I'll be speaking about later about the window is the trees and the greenery somehow all spreads out, leaves an area for you to see as a focal point. So it's almost like it is bringing you directly to the spot that you're supposed to look. There's no other way to look at it. Whereas the bridge, you can kind of go one way and enjoy this or that. But because it's so simple, I'm only showing what I want to show, which is less is more. There's a combination here that's really, really strong to highlight the subject matter that I want you to see. A different day, but similar things here. I have another leading lines with the tulips and the lady with the red jacket. So once again, getting really close to a railing or some type of guiding repeated line, this being the railing, is taking you from the front of the image with the tulips and the trees and the very, very compact, dense colors and subject matter that's on the left, separating the gray and concrete side of the pavement. Luckily, very, very luckily for me, the difference between this photo and the main lighthouse is she had very, very popping red shoes and a very, very popping red jacket. And that's why it's important for hopefully your subject or thing to, when you're leading information over there, there's something to now hold the guest or hold the viewer. Because if she wasn't there or she only had on the white shirt, it would be a pop, but it wouldn't be as significant and highlight her as the star of the photo. My last composition principle is the window. The window is when the main subject is in the background or the distance, but there's things in the foreground that are cutting up space that could be seen as a secondary element, but the main subject is framed in the background. My example here would be the Golden Gate Bridge. As you can see, I have a table here. I have the couple off to the side with this big winding, interesting tree, some bushes down at the bottom, but it's all for the Golden Gate Bridge to maybe be that 40%, be that 45% of the frame. But it's in the background, it's cut out, it's in the distance, almost like a window. Whereas whatever is closer to you is less important, but you can see through it to that next thing. And I think that this is a pretty good example of that. And my second example of this is going back to Maine, where I had a tree on the right hand side on a landscape photo with a bench that fell under it. And the way that the bushes and the trees all came together and cut out this oval in the center was beautiful, 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 beautiful. But it goes to, again, of if your subject or your main focal point is not ready or it's not present, it can be a beautiful setup, but it'll fall flat because there's nothing really there. And there was boats in that oval, that window that was created, but it's just not as strong as I want it to be, like at all. Like maybe if there was a closer boat, maybe if the boat had a darker color, like a beautiful red or dark blue, green, anything. But the window of this photo is really, really, really good. And I try to continue to look for things like that when I'm going around and doing things. But that focal point just eluded me in that moment, and it didn't make the picture as strong as I wanted it to be. If you really enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. And here's 2 more videos to show you how I use composition on a daily. Thanks for watching. I'm out, y'all. Peace.